to another episode of the Veterans View Show. And today is a very special day. You know, we've already interviewed Ms. Dobson, that's on the Republican side. So today we're interviewing Mr. Shomari Figures on the Democratic side of the that's coming for this new congressional district. So we just want to be fair with everyone. And so today we're going to ask questions. But before we start getting to any questions, Mr. Figures, I would like for you to give us your history from like school, high school, or all the way up to current.
Absolutely. Well, first, Mr. Davis, thank you for having us.
Yes, sir.
And I know you are one of the esteemed veterans in this nation, so thank you for the service and protecting this country.
Thank you.
And thank you to everyone who does what you do, or what you did. But so look, I'm born and raised in Mobile, Alabama. That's where I grew up. That's home for me, which is now part of this district. I tell people that Mobile and Phoenix City don't have, a long history of being mentioned in the same sentence. But now we're bound in what I call this congressional garment of destiny, and we're all in the same district, District 2. And so I was born in Alabama and Mobile. My parents, both born and raised in Mobile, Alabama as well. My family goes back, to slavery in this district. Clark County is also, or part of Clark County rather, is in this district. And going back to slavery, that's where both sides of my family came from Clark County. So my roots in this district run as deep as they could possibly go. I am the son of two elected officials. My father, first integrated University of Alabama's law school, was the first black to go to law school, or in the first class to admit blacks into the law school, and he graduated and went on to be a civil rights attorney down in the Mobile and Black Belt areas, and dealt with a lot of landmark cases back that way. Most notable being they brought a civil suit against the Klan back in the 80s that actually resulted in the Klan being bankrupted after they lynched a kid in Mobile, lynched a teenager in Mobile back in 1981. My father was elected to the state senate in the late 70s, one of the first black state senators post-Reconstruction here in the state of Alabama, and then he served in that capacity until he died suddenly in 96. My mother was on the city council down in Mobile at the time, and after that, after my dad died, she ran for that Senate seat, and she still holds that Senate seat to this day. And from them, I come. And I was raised in Mobile, educated in Mobile, went to public schools throughout my life. Graduated John L. LaFleur High School, won a state championship in 2002 in basketball, 6A. You always got to get a plug to the state titles.
All right.
After I finished high school, I went on to University of Alabama. I graduated from there in 3 years and majored in criminal justice and history, and then decided to follow in my father's footsteps and went to law school. I went to law school also again at the University of Alabama. And coming out of law school, look, I knew I wanted to be involved. I knew I wanted to look at ways to give back to the people and places that were responsible for me being me in the first place. And so I kind of embarked on this pathway that took me through federal government service. And so I went and clerked for a judge who was from Alabama, a federal judge who was from Alabama, clerked on the court with HURT. I then ended up working on President Barack Obama's campaign in Ohio, and then ultimately went over to Washington, D.C., where I had the privilege of serving as the domestic director of presidential personnel in the White House for several years, and then spent time at the Department of Justice under Attorney General Lynch. And then I spent several years as a counsel on Capitol Hill in the Senate, on the Senate side. And then most recently, I was back at the Department of Justice as Deputy Chief of Staff to Attorney General Merrick Garland. Stepped down from that role and came back home to run for this seat, because I felt that we had a lot to offer in terms of the experience that I've been able to gain throughout my career in trying to leverage that federal government experience for the betterment of people here in Phoenix City and all the way down to Mobile.
Great, I appreciate that. And that leads me into my first question. What is your vision for Russell County, Alabama, and Macon County, Alabama, being that we have not had good growth as far as business, and that we are right next to Fort Moore, and we should have business feeding Fort Moore. So what's your plan?
Look, I think it's, challenges that face Macon County and Russell County are replicated in a lot of counties across this district. When this district was created, a lot of focus was put on Mobile and Montgomery. Those are like the quote unquote the population centers of this district. But the majority of this district, 11 out of the 13 counties in this district are rural counties, considered rural counties. 11 out of the 13, well, actually 12 out of the 13 counties in this district lost population last year. Right? 11 out of the 13 have, continuously lost population year over year, for the last 5, 6, 7 years, and longer in some cases. And so we can't forget the communities outside and the counties outside of Mobile and Montgomery. And so Russell County being one of those, Macon County obviously being one of those as well, that has an opportunity to grow and sort of support industries that flow from the military and proximity to the military base. We have a number of military bases either in this district or in close enough proximity where they pull resources and employees from this district. And so we have to figure out how to leverage that. We have to be able to bring, ways that we can partner our military bases with programs at our universities, at our high schools, and with our small businesses, better equipping our small businesses to actually be able to contract with those military bases and beyond just the military, just the federal government in general, because with military bases comes an avenue of federal contracting that's not present in communities that don't have military bases. And so we have to be able to make sure that we are supporting small businesses that are here, that we are incentivizing creation of small businesses where they're necessary to be able to take care, so we don't have to go and contract with someone, here in Russell County. You shouldn't have to go contract with someone in even Mobile County, right, to do the sorts of things that we can have small businesses prepared for here in Russell or Macon County to do. I think we also have to look, there are a lot of, one issue that rural communities have across this district, and I'm sure it's one here as well, is that Russell County doesn't have the tax base that they have in a Mobile County or a Montgomery County, right? And so being able to provide the sort of local tax incentives and the sort of other incentives that you can provide larger companies to consider relocating to your area, they just simply don't have that capacity to do that. And so I think that's a role where federal government has to step in. And I think there's a way where we can leverage the proximity to military bases here to do that. But one thing I want to do as a congressman is establish what I refer to as a rural economic assistance grant program, which is basically, it will allow counties like Russell County and cities within Russell County to be able to petition the federal government, those cities that don't have that tax base where they can't go and offer $1 million or $2 or $5 million to some company in tax incentives, but they can petition for a grant that they can actually use in their recruitment of these companies to actually relocate here. Cool. And if you use the money, great. If you can't close the deal, then no harm, no foul. That money comes back and we can try to get it to another community to be able to use it to recruit as well.
Right. And that was one of the things that the other part what I was going to ask you is about working with your counterpart should you win, like in the Huntsville area. They're building Toyota plant and / Mazda. Getting some spinoff here from there. Try to get, if it ain't nothing but making car seats.
Yeah.
Getting spin-off plants in. Would you be willing to work with them to see can we get some of that spin-off?
Oh, absolutely. Look, you have to, because at the end of the day, look, the job of a congressman or a congresswoman, it doesn't change based on who the president is. It doesn't change based on who the U.S. senator is. It doesn't change based on who the governor is. The job is consistent. Your job is to go to Washington, D.C. and advocate for your district, the people in your district, the workers in your district, the companies in your district, the schools in your district, the teachers, the law enforcement officers, the military personnel, the retirees that are in your district. That doesn't change. That remains consistent. And so you have to do everything you can to leverage the entirety of federal government for the benefit of your district. And that means working across the aisle. A lot of these issues shouldn't be political. Like how we treat our veterans, that shouldn't fall along political lines. Like how we treat, prioritizing, the capacity for people to start up small businesses and expand and grow, and access to capital and startup funding and lifeline funding and growth funding, expansion funding. Those shouldn't be political issues. Okay. So you have to work across the aisle to make that a reality.
And can you tell our viewers, in your opinion, why this second congressional district was established?
Yeah, so it was, if you go all the way back to the history, it was established, on the basis of a law, the Voting Rights Act, that came to be because of the struggles here in Alabama that many African Americans of a certain age personally participated in, but certainly many of a younger generation like myself have been the beneficiary of those efforts, from the civil rights movement, from acts that happened, even some here in Russell County, but in Montgomery County and in Tuskegee and Selma and Birmingham, right? So you got the Voting Rights Act. The Voting Rights Act set forth, certain standards of representation that that communities should strive to adhere to in terms of outcomes of elections, or not outcomes, but in terms of people in communities having a legitimate opportunity to select a candidate of their choice. And the state of Alabama, as every state does, after every census, every 10 years, they redraw congressional district lines to make sure that they all have the same amount of people and that sort of thing. Well, this last go around, the state of Alabama drew the district in such a way that they packed the majority of black people into one district so as to limit the outcome or limit the impact that they could have in the outcome of multiple congressional seats. Terry Sewell, has District 7, and they kind of packed most blacks over there and kind of split up some other ones. But even this current iteration of the Supreme Court found that Alabama, what they had done, violated the Voting Rights Act, and they had done it in a way that diluted the impact of black votes. And so they told them to create what they called a second opportunity district that was either majority, minority, or something close to it. And what we got was something close to it. So now this district is 48% black. That's up from, I think, originally in the 20s, the way the original maps were drawn. It's 46% white. And so it's a district that, it's a district that I think, everybody here can say now that we have an opportunity to, if we show up at the polls to elect a candidate of our preference and are not limited in doing that just based on the demographics of the district.
Okay, great. Well, we're going to take a quick station break and get a chance to get ready for the second half.
All right.
As a small business owner, there are key things that you need, like customers, connections, and sales. But you might be short on time or knowledge to handle your marketing. This is where we can help. We know marketing. We know digital advertising. We know small business owners. You focus on what you are good at, and let us help you by doing what we are good at.
And welcome back. And we're still here with Mr. Figures, who's running for the 2nd Congressional District here in Alabama, which is great for us, the 2nd Congressional District, because we was in the 3rd Congressional District, we still are in the 3rd Congressional District until November. So this is a great move as far as I am concerned. But Mr. Figures, I want to ask you another question. What do you think about polls? Do you believe polls really tell the story?
No, I don't. I mean, look, all polling, I certainly think there's some value in polls. You can certainly, pick up on trends, that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, polling, for the most part, is based on a representative sample, right? And normally that representative sample is no more than a few hundred people. And obviously, a few hundred people don't represent the sentiments of millions of people. We've seen polling be accurate before. We've seen polling be wrong before. We've seen polling be very wrong before. Even in the case of 2016, none of the polls had Donald Trump, being able to win the election, and he won it, rather convincingly in 2016. Right. And so, look, I think there's certainly some value in polls. They're not at all, 100% accurate. Even, when they release the results, they always talk about their margin of error that they have in the polls. But certainly some value. But at the end of the day, talking to people directly yourself and being on the ground and being able to meet people and getting in front of the community through shows like this, that's the best way to really get a gauge of what the public is feeling and what they're thinking. Okay,
that's great. Now, my next question is about women's rights. What do you feel? Because, myself, I have one daughter, I have 3 granddaughters, and I have 2 great-granddaughters. And I believe in a woman's right. But what I believe has nothing to do with this conversation here. What do you think about a woman's right?
Look, I'm in agreement with you. I believe that there's not a single law in the books in America that I'm aware of that tells a man what he has to do with his own body.
That's correct.
And, for us to tell women that they have to do, what they have to do with their body is just not right to me. And you don't have to agree with abortion. At the end of the day, I think it's not about, whether or not you agree someone, whether or not they should have or have not, or not have an abortion rather. It's about whether or not you think the role of government is to remove that choice from them altogether. And I, for one, I'm in the camp that women should be able to make decisions, based on their own experience, based on their own healthcare circumstances, based on their own personal circumstances, based on what they think is best for them, consulting, with their doctors, with their faith leaders, and when they choose to. And I just believe that that's a right that women should have in this country.
That's good. Well, thank you, because we think alike on that. I believe that a woman's right is her choice, not our choice. So my next question is, when it comes to Shelby versus Holder, if that comes up for a vote to get the Civil Rights Act back, would you be willing to vote for it?
Absolutely. Look, it's something that's introduced. This is something that Congresswoman Terry Sewell leads on every session since that's been struck down. It's now wrapped into what we call the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, to be able to bring back certain protections that were previously there. In Shelby, the part that really hurt the most there was that there was a requirement that certain states like Alabama that had a history of discriminatory voting practices, that before they made any significant changes to voting, whether that was district lines or whether that was, eligibility requirements or whatever, they had to go through what was called a pre-clearance process, which means they had to present their proposed plan to the Department of Justice before they implemented it. And, Shelby v. Holder eliminated that pre-clearance requirement. And so, look, I think, when you, like myself, when you're born and raised black in Alabama, you learn almost before you can walk, you learn the role that federal government has had to play historically in making this state do right by black people, especially in the context of voting rights. And so to just say that we are beyond that, I think was ill-advised, but nevertheless, the Supreme Court decided what they decided. Don't agree with it, but it is the law, and so we have to work within the realms of the law and the Constitution in order to change it to get those protections back. And so I would absolutely support that in Congress.
Okay, great. And explain to us the John Lewis law that's been wrote, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so look, there are a variety of factors to it. One of the big pieces is restoring, the pre-clearance requirements here at the Department of Justice, but it's broader than that. It's the voting rights protections that we worry about, that we see being eroded across the country, whether it's, precinct closures or ID requirements or any of the other parameters that we've seen a lot of states put in place in an effort to sort of restrict and suppress and reduce the amount of turnout at the end of the day. And look, making it tougher for people to vote is the goal we've seen of some politicians. And I for one, I think voting should be the easiest thing that we do in our democratic society. I don't think it should be tough. I don't think it should be that burdensome. I don't think you should be imposing criteria on people that historically have not been there. Look, we just came out of an election cycle where we had the entire premise of an election questioned, by the person who lost the election. And, that sort of, sentiment is what stokes, what I think is an overblown sort of fear of quote unquote voter fraud. We've not had mass levels of voter fraud in this country. We just haven't. That's just the facts. And so, we have to have laws in place to make sure that we're protecting against voter fraud, and those laws are on the books, and they should be enforced where there's clear and convincing evidence of fraud taking place. But to do all of these other things that essentially are solutions in search of a problem, I think are wrong. And the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, it takes some steps to get into the bottom of that.
That's great. Now, this is what I want to go into next, because a lot of people, not just here in Russell County, I think all over the country, are not really paying enough attention to what's going on in the country, in our politics and everything. So, Project 2025, without going into everything, just tell us a little bit of what you understand of Project 2025 and just your thoughts.
Yeah, so look, I think it is I think one criticism that I've long had of the Trump administration and his most recent, this current campaign is the threats that they put out in terms of how they will use federal government for a variety of things. And Project 2025, at its core, is a consolidation of power within the presidency that we historically have not seen. And look, the United States is a democracy, and we have to keep it that way. And when we act as a democracy, I think this country thrives in ways that has allowed us to be the sort of beacon on a hill that we are, across America. Across the world, rather. And, I think we just have to do everything that we can to make sure that we are sticking to the core foundational principles of this country, of people having the right to vote, of people working through the three branches of government that we have, the legislative branch, the judiciary branch, the executive branch, and utilizing those branches in a way that is consistent with the founding of our country, and not doing what we can to sort of consolidate power into the presidency only when it's a president we like. Right? We can't do that, and so that puts us on a pathway. I think that will get us perilously close to being in situations where our democracy is questioned and underrated, and I can't support that. I would not support that if it was a Democratic president. I certainly won't support it. If it's our current president or whoever, if President Trump is reelected, I won't support it then either. Like, we have to do what we can to make sure that our system that has worked for well over 200 years continues to work. It's no coincidence that America has worked the way it has worked, right? And I think that has primarily been the product of people subscribing to our current form of government. And as I understand Project 2025, it would change that significantly, and I don't think that would be for the better at all.
And this will be my last question, and that would be, being that you have worked in the White House before, and we have military, our responsibility is to the Constitution, to take care of our country, to support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Against all enemies.
Against all enemies, further and domestic. Do we need to make adjustments so that no one, from the president or whoever, can make the military do what they know is unlawful?
I don't think we have to make adjustments per se. I think what we have to do is make sure that we have leadership in place that is enforcing the law. Right, the United States military has not been taken under the rule of any president, since its founding, right? And we've had former members of the military as the head of, the nation before. And I think we just have to do everything that we can to make sure that the law is being enforced, that we are, valuing the sort of constitutional parameters that are in place. We're not a dictatorship. We're just not. Like, the military obviously responds to the president's commands. The president is the commander-in-chief. However, the military is funded by Congress. And so the military can't do much without Congress, and the courts are there if there's a dispute about the role of the military. But look, I think America, like, when you look at disputes that happen in other countries, right? When you look at uprisings or coups, as they call them in other countries, a lot of times they start with someone taking control of the military. And that has not happened in the United States before, and I think that's in large part because of the quality and integrity and the respect and the honor and dedication of the men and women who wear the uniform, that they understand that they ultimately report to a Constitution of the United States. And that's the sort of gold standard that drives everything that they do. And they've done that faithfully for 200 plus years. Some branches longer than others, but nevertheless, I just think we need to make sure that we're doing everything to uphold those values and make sure that the people that we're bringing into the military still reflect those historical values that have made the military the greatest fighting force that we have ever seen in this world.
Okay, great. Well, I want to thank you for coming to the show, Mr. Figures.
Yes, sir.
And for the citizens out there of Phoenix City and Russell County, Alabama, you have just heard from the second candidate that's running for this second congressional district. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something from it so that you can make a good decision when it comes time for election in November. So we're going to say so long for now, and hopefully in September we're going to come back with a debate between the two candidates that's running for this 2nd Congressional District. Until next time, Veteran Review Show, we'll see you. My name is Leroy Davis, and I'm the host. Thank you.